There we go. All right. Hello, everyone. We are back again with another interview. This week, it is with Mrs. Bethany DeGraaf, first grade teacher extraordinaire from Quincy Elementary. I'm maybe a little biased because two of my three children have had her as a teacher. And full disclosure, my children have had her for a teacher. So, but we'll get started right away with we always want to know why education? Why did you pick to go into teaching?
Okay, well, I, for one, just loved school. I guess you could say I was always a person or kiddo that loved school. So, and I just had really good connections with my teachers. And through the years, there were just some teachers that kind of felt like they were almost like parents to me. And I felt I loved that feeling. And and then I had teachers that weren't very good teachers, and I thought, I just want to be a better teacher than them. And so, I don't know, it was something that I always connected with, and I loved being around kids. I always loved babysitting. And so it just kind of all was, put that all together, and I just knew that teaching was the right thing for me.
Awesome. So you've been in a fifth grade classroom and third grade and now first. Did you always want to be with the littler kiddos?
I didn't really have a preference, I would say. I enjoyed all ages. I even did some long-term subbing in the middle school when I first started out. And I really enjoyed that, doing science. So I found that there's really great things about every age. So, I think when I started in first grade, I was like, whoa, this is a lot, but I've really just grown to love it. And I've worked really hard to become a better first grade teacher.
Awesome. We had lots of questions about the first grade that came in.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to kind of combine them because I know everybody wants their questions to be asked. But a lot of them are, is it difficult to teach writing at that level because they're just fresh out of kindergarten? I mean, how much my students want to know, how much are they writing? How much do you expect? How much do they grow from the beginning to the end of first grade generally?
Well, I can say that they don't have a lot of writing stamina at the beginning, especially at this time of year. If you can have them write independently for maybe 5-6 minutes at this time, I mean, at the max 10 if they're really engaged, depending on which activity you're doing, that's kind of a goal. You really don't expect more than that at this time. As the school year progresses, you really can be surprised with first graders how much they enjoy writing. And we usually build up to about 20-25 minutes a day. And for some kids, that's still a lot. You always have those kids that just have a really hard time, expressing themselves through writing. But they do grow a ton. Even those kids that don't, always want to do it and don't really love it. But they do. And, so you do see a lot of growth. And I think that you really have to model for them a lot. And so I show them that I'm a writer and that I enjoy writing. And I think that helps inspire them. I'm trying to remember, was there another part of that question?
No, that was about it. But
okay.
I just saw another kind of a follow-up. What are some of your kind of go-to strategies when you have a kid who digs in and is not particularly enjoying the writing?
From experience, I find that most of the time it's because they just think they can't, or they don't feel like they have a good idea. And so usually just having a conversation with them and kind of asking them about what they like to do, or it's almost like you can distract them with a conversation and then you kind of bring it back around like, oh, that would be a great thing to write about. I've also learned that for those kiddos, sometimes you have to do little things to help them. Like maybe they'll tell me what they want to write about, and I will like maybe write the first sentence and say, okay, you trace this. You trace this sentence. Or maybe I'll just make lines. I'll say, okay, you have 6 words in your sentence, so I'm going to make a line for every word, just so it seems more manageable. Um, and I think for most of the time it's just getting them like to realize they can write about something they're interested in, you know.
Yeah. My students, we've been talking about using like writing notebooks and mentor texts, and many of them are interested in how you utilize either the or both the writer's notebook or like mentor texts for how to write in the first grade.
Well, we do use a lot of mentor texts. Our district does provide us. We are very fortunate that anytime we've changed our writing curriculum quite a few times, but anytime they do provide mentor texts and really offer that for us. So I would say we use that more than anything. And most of the time, we kind of make our own kind of the teachers kind of adapt what works for them for like what we want the kids to write in. And so as for like using a notebook, we would use that more for like just free writing, but usually when we have like writing that is a specific type of writing we want to use, we use like maybe a packet that has visuals and those kinds of things, just because we kind of teach like a writing process. So
Speaking of that, what does the writing process and workshopping like I remember my kids writing narratives for you in the beginning of the year. So what does that process look like, and how long would it take for you? Do you take the entire first term to do narratives, and how do you do each of the lots of questions about what a writing workshop process looks like for a piece?
Well, right now we spend about the first month of school just kind of setting up your writer's workshop. So it's getting them used to using the tools, talking about just what writing workshop looks like. I like to use a kind of like a pie chart to kind of show them like, I'll be showing you how to, a mini lesson for maybe 10, 15 minutes. You're going to go off and write, on independently while I'm helping, coming around and helping. So it's more of introducing that workshop structure. But right now we just started using what we call writing rotations, and we really like it. So we kind of talk about it as it's a wheel, kind of a cycle that you go through. And we start by first gathering ideas. That's our first station. And then once they've worked through that station, they can go to rehearsing your story. And we have different visuals. We use story hands, we call them. So for narrative, you have like, we're using your thumb is like the beginning part where you introduce your characters and your setting. Then you have your events, and then at the end kind of share a feeling. And then for informational, you'd use the hand again. So you would do like your topic, introducing your topic, and then 3 facts, and then kind of a summary at the end. So we have those visuals with a hand, and we've really had the kids start to really practice telling their stories before they write them. And then after that, after they rehearsed doing that, we have them sketch their story, little sketches. So that's the next part. And then after sketching, they would move on to writing. And then after writing, it would be editing, and then publishing, and then starting the cycle again.
Okay.
And they really like it. They really do like it. And it helps where your writers who are ready to go and want to keep writing can. And then your kiddos that need that extra help can, you can kind of work them through the process, but it doesn't slow down those kids that are ready to write more.
I like that. I feel like it's always changing, right? Like we're always learning new things.
Yeah.
Do I'm guessing just from remembering, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. How do you balance individual writing and collaborative writing? Like, do you have kids do both?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the collaborative writing is good, especially for those kiddos that, just aren't that confident. And also, they love to write collaborative writing. Like, they love class books. I mean, that's really fun for them. They feel really proud of that. Um, and so it is hard to balance that, I will say, to find time to do both. But like this week, I am our grammar lessons are, using a capital at the beginning of a sentence. So I thought each day we're just going to write. We had watched this cute little video about a fox and the things that the fox had done, just, kind of made up. And I was like, okay, let's pick our own animal. And then every day we're just going to add something that this animal has done. And so we'll make a class book that way. So you kind of have to fit it in, so it might be we only write one sentence a day or something, but they do love those collaborative writings. And I think we used to do more of them before we got so heavy into writing. Like, our writing curriculum is much more heavy than it used to be way back. And we used to do more of the collaborative, and we've kind of gotten away from that. And we're realizing we need to get back to it. So more of us are trying to do those collaborative writings, but it is hard to balance it, I will say.
Do you what's the word I'm looking for? I do remember the class books, because I remember we could come in at parent teacher conferences and you find your
Mm-hmm.
kid's page, the one that they drew or illustrated.
Mm-hmm.
When kids are entering the first grade, what does their writing look like? I guess so that'd be end of kindergarten, beginning of first grade. Like, what are they capable of right away? Are they able to, like, it's hard for me to remember at this point. Are they able to write any sentences, or is it all super phonetic? And
It really depends. I mean, I have some kiddos like that can write full sentences, and they have, capital letters and punctuation in the right spot. And then I have kids that, can't write one words correctly. So you really have, and that's, I think, what's really challenging about first grade is that it's just very, there's a large scale of like ability levels. So that's probably the trickiest, is trying to manage that. But, I think the majority are able to write words, and they don't, they're mostly just maybe the beginning and ending sounds at first. Um, but like they don't look, I mean, there's no punctuation or capitals. So, I mean, they're usually like a lot of run-on sentences is what they are.
do you guys use the Lucy Calkins writing workshop, or have you used it?
We've used pieces of it
Okay.
over time, but we've never adopted that fully. Right now, we use Write Well,
Okay.
which is what our district uses. And if most teachers are honest in Zealand, I think, unless you're newer to the district, I think this is my fourth writing curriculum in the last 10 years. So, just when you get used to one, they switch it. But you kind of pick pieces of each one that you really love or that work, and you kind of keep those. So even though I use Write Well, we used Mesa before that. I pull in pieces of that I feel like are really important. There's also, things from 10 years ago when we kind of had to do our own things. There was some really good stuff I did then, and I still use those things. So it's, I think you kind of tweak it to your own personality or your own things. And I know every teacher does it a little bit different, but I figure as long as the bones are still the same, it's okay.
And the end product, because Wyoming has adopted Lucy Calkins, but there's a lot of people who still pull from Wrightwell because they did that as well, and Mesa. So
Yeah.
they like to do like you. They one of the teachers I was talking to said, she goes, I like to Frankenstein it. I use the best of everything and create.
Yeah.
And as long as we're all coming out the same in the end,
Yep.
that's the goal. What is one of your favorite writing projects to do with your kiddos?
I'd have to say it's our animal research projects. Because we usually do them towards the end of the year, so they've really grown as writers, and we've done a lot of work with like text features, and they just get so into it, and they've their reading skills have grown so much, so they really can research, and they get so excited. And most kids do love some sort of animal, so they we give them a lot of variety of what they can choose. So I've never had a kiddo that wasn't excited about writing about their animal. And the fact that there's just those basic things that you can find out about an animal that makes it a little bit more simple for them and manageable, whereas some topics where they might be really interested in, but it's hard to find those pieces to write about. So it's one of my favorite things. I mean, they have so much pride when they finish those books and they share them, and it's my favorite. In fact, I was so sad when we had to shut down school because that's the project we missed doing, and it's my absolute favorite. So it was a bummer, big time.
Yeah. That brings up another question that someone had. How is the way that you've done writing, like in maybe stations and stuff, how has that changed this year as opposed to pre-COVID? Have you had to make accommodations for safety precautions?
Yeah, it is different because we used to have a lot of collaboration, and we used to have the kids kind of move around the room during the rotation. So you might have an area of your room where everybody goes to publish, or where everybody goes to work on editing. And so now we can't really do that because they kind of have to stay pretty much at their desks most of the time. We do share, but we just make sure we're socially distanced and those things. And we've also had to use a little bit more where we are taking pictures of our writing, and so that we have it documented and saved through that way also, because if something were to happen and we were having to go online, that we could access those things. So we have had to look at it a little differently this year.
That's another thing someone asked about with COVID. Are first graders being asked to type more than they would have in the past to prepare for things like virtual? Or are there things to get kids writing still for school?
No, I wouldn't say we've been doing a lot of typing. It's very, very labored for first graders to type. And especially with the iPads, it's just, pecking. It really is terrible to watch and to so most of the time, if we were going to publish something, then I would type it for them. And then, with, anytime you're writing, we do have, on the iPads, we're using Seesaw. And, you can use a stylus to write on it, but still, or if they're using their finger, the handwriting is really tricky. So, I would almost rather have them, record themselves of what they wanted, and then, have it dictated, because otherwise it might be impossible to read. So I'm really, I really hope that we don't have to go to that, but, so I'm hoping we at least can get comfortable with using, writing and using our writing tools, so that if something did happen, I could send home a notebook that we would just adapt to use. So, because typing, I don't think, is an option for first grade.
No, I know. It's hardly an option for my third grader. So
Yeah.
It's
it's tough.
tricky. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for my 8th grade students to type
Mm-hmm.
everything. So I've been
Yeah.
trying to we've been doing a lot of writing by hand, and they've been thankful for it because they're
Mm-hmm.
so sick of looking at screens.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say first graders are the same right now. They don't love being on their screens, and I'm okay with that.
yeah, exactly. Um, so there were also a bunch of questions. I feel like people think of like the kindergarten, first grade, second grade classes, and they think it's so many kids and one adult. Like, how do you keep everyone on task? And there were a lot of how do you manage so many small people at once and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I feel like you're very
Well,
good at this. So,
I mean, like I said, you really have to model that, what you're asking them to do, you're willing to do. And I think you also just kind of have to have high expectations, and, you have to work a lot, you have to practice a lot. So again, building that stamina, first you're writing for just a few minutes, and then you keep encouraging them, like, wow, we wrote for 10 minutes today. Let's try to go for 12 tomorrow, and set goals. Um, I think there's times though where you just have like a kind of sit down and say, hey, listen, you know, you need to be doing what you're supposed to do, and if you don't want to, we're going to do it later. So there's
yeah.
times where you have to just kind of lay down the law.
Hmm.
But I think if if they trust you and stuff, they usually come along. But you're always going to have those certain kids that they're just habitually going to be kind of like, just I'm going to just hang out and just chill here until she comes over. And you can't always battle that. Sometimes you just have to be okay with being like, I'm going to get to with that person tomorrow, but right now I have to give these other kids attention. So it's a constant, that never goes away. But you learn how to give the ones that need more attention a little bit more. And then, you also have those kids that are independent, thankfully, and don't need as much attention. So, um, it, it's definitely not something that's ever easy, I would say, but, you know, you just work at it.
It's a learned over time skill, I think, to be able to do
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Definitely.
Okay, I think we have 2 more questions. One is, how do you manage school and home? Like, how do you keep those 2 things separate, or don't you? Do you just bring everything home? And everybody's very worried about stress.
Well, I mean, it is stressful. I mean, there's no doubt. And I think, um, being that we care about our students, it is hard to just put it aside when you come home. But, and I have a husband who's a principal, which in some ways is positive because then, we are working in the same realm. So I feel like I can talk to him about my stresses or things going on, and he can understand. And so I think what's important is having somebody that you can talk to about, school. Because if your significant other or, doesn't work in the school realm, they don't always understand. So it's always good to have another teacher friend that you can confide in and kind of like just get those frustrations off your chest sometimes and then move on. um, but there's times too where you just have to be okay with saying like, okay, I've got a lot of work in my bag, but I'm setting it down when I get home, and I'm leaving it. And it's okay. You can't do that every night,
Right.
but that'll bite you. But you just, yeah, it is stressful. There's no, I mean, I don't know any teachers that don't get stressed out, honestly. I mean, but I'd say there's probably stresses in every job. You know,
Yeah.
so I think we just have these, human beings that are counting on us. So it's a little more, but, and we love them. And so I don't
Yeah.
know. I haven't figured out how to manage that, honestly. And, um, you know, it's something, again, you just keep working on.
For me, I had to get a therapist to talk to because no one in my family teaches. I mean,
Yeah.
I have in-laws who do, but like none of my immediate family understands education.
Yeah.
So I got a therapist and it's been great.
Yeah.
So and then of course this is the final question that everyone wants to know. What is your best advice for someone starting out as an elementary educator?
I think that my best advice would be just to be prepared to adapt. And if something doesn't go right the first time, just, you know, shrug your shoulders and say, okay, we'll do something new tomorrow. And or you can realize that, like, you can be in the middle of something and it's not working out, and it's perfectly okay to say, you know what, guys, this isn't going how I planned. We're going to just scrap it and try something else. And it's okay. You know, it'll be okay.
It will Tomorrow is another day, right?
Yeah,
That
it
is
is.
if my child has learned anything from his loving, wonderful teachers at Quincy, it is tomorrow's a new day. We will
Yeah.
try again. So
Yeah, and I mean, I have to go by that motto, especially with all this stuff, new stuff that's been going on. So it's like, you know, I've had to learn a lot about technology that I didn't ever want to have to learn.
mhm.
Um, so, but I'm figuring it out, slow but sure.
Slow but sure. And you all do. Somebody asked this, but I already know the answer. You're really good about taking kids outside, even when it's not recess, even when it's not PE, even when it's not for a mask break. But like even
Mhm.
before all this, you were always really good about judging the room and saying, "We need a break.
Mhm.
We need to get out and
Mhm.
run it out or something."
Mhm.
So
Yes. Yes, for sure.
I think that's super important that when teachers can
Mhm.
read that room and know, you know what, it's time for a run,
Yeah.
quick a second.
Yes,
So
definitely.
awesome. Well, thank you, Bethany. I'm sure my students will have lots to say in their um, responses. I'll have to share with you because they've been really awesome the way that they've been discussing these. So I'm gonna
Awesome.
stop.
This was really fun.
Yeah,
I mean, I like talking about my job, so this
right.
was fun.
We get to work in a really awesome field. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop recording a minute
Okay.